Hi, it's Warren Hewitt. I hope you're doing marvellously well. So this one's a fun one because this is a track by a young artist called Caden Cashmere. I believe she's 15, coming on 16 years old. And it's a song that I wrote with a great artist herself called Leanna James. So we wrote the song, and when we wrote it originally, we wanted it to be a super, pop song. So a lot of elements in this mix are very, very pop. You've got electronic elements, you've got some swooshes, some break stuff, some really, really cool electronic elements. Also, for Caden though, I added live drums and some acoustic guitar and other guitar elements just to make it a little bit more organic. So it's a good one because I'll show you the mix breakdown. You'll see how I blended the two things together. But for you, you could mix these files any way you like. So you're saying, I can mix these. Yes, you can go to the link here, the link down below, the links that are appearing all over the place. And you can go and you can sign up on the email list and you will get these multi-tracks for free to download. Yes, you can download these multi-tracks for free and mix this song. This is what we do every single month in the Academy. In the Academy, we break down a song and everybody downloads the multi-tracks, and then we do a feedback Friday and we listen to all the mixes and we talk about it. So it's a great, great thing. So please, if you want, try the 14-day free trial. But nonetheless, go and download these free tracks and mix the song. So today we have a fun song. I worked with this artist. Her name is Caden Cashmere. I believe she was a whopping 14, possibly 15 years old when we recorded this song. I think she just turned 15. And her album just came out, strangely enough. This is a song I wrote with a girl called Leanna James, who is a wonderful writer. So she and I wrote this song. It's a great, great song. It's kind of a pop song. It's kind of a rock song. I can talk about it all day. We can actually listen to it. The way that I did this, I think for me, is quite unique because we started with a fully programmed drum kit because we were doing specifically writing for a specific artist that was very, very pop orientated. So what we did is we took this very pop orientated song and then added some programming stuff to it and then added some more live drums and some samples. Kind of got a little bit carried away in the drums, but it's fun because a lot of the time now, those of us that are doing EDM or rock, you can get kind of tied into one direction. With this song, we're doing a bit of both. So let's check it out. You know what, let's start by listening to the song. Let's listen to like the first verse and chorus and you'll get an idea of what I'm talking about. Very treated vocal here, obviously.
As I walk through a storm,
synth and vocal.
Falling down, I can count on one hand my friends who stuck around. But I'm kicking and I'm screaming, I'm picking up the pieces. I got to let you know.
So obviously, programmed drums coming in here. And then this is where the live drums, etc. come in. So there's a blend here of live drums and programming. Cool. Now you'll notice some acoustic guitar in there and there's some live bass that comes in. There's some synth bass, but there's also some live bass. This is kind of the extra elements that I added to the pop version. So those of you that are downloading these files, you'll be able to get all of these parts. You're going to get to hear the acoustic stuff, the electric stuff. You're going to hear the live drums, the samples. I'm going to give you everything and you'll get to mess around with it and really have some fun. Okay, so let's start from the top. There was this warrior. What I did is in the bridge, I created a vocal part. You'll hear it here. So that little created vocal there was stuck in the front of the song.
As I walk.
Cool. So that's basically the intro of the song. All that's been really added to it is this reverse effect here. So the way I did it is it's my acoustic guitar part from the verses. There is the iZotope vinyl. See what that's doing. It's doing a huge amount. I mean, that really is a great way of trashing it out. There's the H delay. So it's bounced together with a reverse effect. You know, it's a lot of that. Most of that effect is already done, so you could use it without these two effects on, and you'll get this. It's also kind of cool. So the great thing about this kind of stuff is you can do what I did, or you can treat it in a completely different way. Down here, these three things we've got going on here are just reverses going in. So you can hear the synth. It's just a volume-rid synth down here. So that's a time-stretched reversed kick, believe it or not. And then the very last thing is just a bass swell. So those are all the elements. I mean, there are many, many things that you can do. But this is kind of the dance kind of elements that give it some excitement.
As I walk through
Vocaling on its own. Really, really dumb drums. Now, my recollection is that when I came up with the original beat, I believe I built it on my iMachine. Sounds like a very iMachine part. And all that's really going on here is a little EQ, because even though it's a kick and a snare, I didn't want to give away all of that super, super bottom end straight away. So where the kick would normally be boosted at about 60, 50, like 40 to 60, where the real lows are, it's actually cut there. So there's still kick, but take it off. You can hear that extra boom. Now it's gone. The bass here. Yeah, I think that's iMachine as well. I think there's just stock sounds. So there's an MV2, which I love, great plugin. C4. If you know, my bass trick is I will compress the low end on a bass super aggressively, just multiband compress it, and then turn it up so it continuously gives me the same bottom end. There's another multiband compressor afterwards, which is actually doing quite a lot. It's a huge part of the sound. So that's the Mac DSP one. Put it back on. It's a huge difference. Off. Back on. So that's compressing a lot of the low mids and the lows. Looks like we're sort of targeting in and around, 370. So 300 is being super compressed, and so 70, and then being gained up by 5 dB. And then just to add even more, there's an R bass after it, which is shelved at 80, pushing at 80 here. So, it's a trick I do on anything bass guitarist, bass synth or whatever, but it's a nice controlled bottom end.
through a storm, and it's all.
And then nicely compressed. acoustic guitar. I'm shaping the acoustic getting quite a lot of the tonal qualities from this. Yeah, it's nice. Hitting the input a bit, getting a little tiny bit of compression, but love the Mac DSP analog channel. But this is the best $27 I've spent on a plugin in a long time. Any of you that have watched any of my stuff will know I'm a huge fan of the Klanghelm MJUC. Really, really great plugin. So it's on the Mark II. Quite a lot of compression going on, between one or two, occasionally 3 dBs worth of compression. It's set dark. It's a little driven, but if I take it off, it's nice. Just darkens it up and just makes it.
Falling down.
Sounds like a record to me.
I can count on one hand.
That's something Brian Karlstrom would always say to me, is like, oh, it makes it sound like a record. And I know that's such a generic thing to say, but I love it. When something just sounds better and you're not quite sure why, and you can't frequency analyze it, and it just sounds better, you know, that sounds like a record. And everybody I've introduced to this plugin, it's like their favorite plugin. And I know I've already talked about it, and Matt Boudreau and I reviewed it. And we reviewed it like 3 months after it came out. We weren't first to the party, but like 27,000 people have watched that video and loved it. It is a wonderful plugin. Highly recommend. Link to plugin review coming up now. All right, next. Here is some strings. I wonder if they're real. No, that's a very Logic strings. See, I don't remember. It might not have been Logic. It might actually have been, that might actually be Expand. Take it off.
And it's all falling down. I can count on one hand my friends who stuck around. But I'm
now I'm listening to it thinking, oh, I could have muted that. Great idea for your remix. Like, it's kind of cool, but at the same time,
through a storm.
kind of nice like this.
And it's all
Then maybe the second half of verse 1 comes in.
I can count on one hand my friends who stuck around. But I'm
Yeah, because it takes up quite a lot of energy. It definitely is there, tough, 600-700 hertz. You know, it's definitely got that kind of toughness. And then the MV2 again.
storm.
Yeah, it's nice. Very nice indeed. So, yeah, the MV2 is like one of my favorite things because it controls the dynamics beautifully. Because not only does it push in the transits to the top, but it also acts like an expander and brings in some energy underneath. So the signal, instead of sort of doing the quieter pieces down here, it doesn't just bring the peaks into it, it brings those quieter parts up as well. So it gives me a lot more even signal. Off. It's very, so it makes that, you know, now it's a lot more even, where off it's like, I'm exaggerating for effect, but those louder notes really jump out of the mix. You can hear the difference with it off.
Through a storm, and it's all falling down. I can count.
It almost goes, only the high notes come through. So the MV2 is a very valuable plugin. Okay, next up is the vocal, and all the fun things that I do are going on here. So one of those big things is, first of all, is just volume rides, the front of those phrases.
As I walk,
So as I walk, as opposed to as I walk, you can see literally, and you can hear, it comes out even.
walk through a storm, and it's all falling down.
So they're pretty even. So what I'm doing here, as you can see, is I'm boosting those quieter parts of the phrase and then turning down the super loud parts of the phrase afterwards. And that just kind of gives us a more even sounding vocal. Plus, our old friend Arvox is on it.
As I walk through a storm and it's all falling down.
So that is feeding a bus, which is all the way down here. So here is my vocal sub. Now, I do the volume ride so that when it goes into the separate bus, there is more of a control on it, so it hits all the compression and EQ evenly. There's a vocal rider here.
As I walk through a storm and it's all falling down.
That's doing even more. Even on, so as I walk, it's doing even more. Watch the and listen.
As I walk through a storm.
So it's doing the same kind of movement I've already done, maybe not as exaggerated, but the first phrase definitely.
As I walk through a storm.
So great stuff, and that is feeding a little tiny top boost on, about 7K here, just for some air, which is hitting a de-esser.
As I walk through a storm.
And that de-esser's in that 5 to 6K. It's actually the default sound of where it came in, which is 5885, which is a painful area for the vocal. You'll notice a lot of the time I compress, EQ, de-ess in chain. I use a lot of de-essing so that I might be boosting the overall brightness of the vocal, but I'm also aware that it might be exaggerating certain pieces of the vocal. So,
as I walk through a storm and it's all.
So it's bright on the walk, and and the storm, maybe the S is getting exaggerated, but the rest of it still has some brightness on it. So that's the great thing about combining de-essing with EQ and compression. And you can stagger them. You can quite often on a very S-y, very lispy vocal, I'll put the de-esser before anything else, right at the beginning. Then maybe a little bit of EQ, a little bit of compression, but always, personally, I prefer EQ into compression. Most of the time, I just feel like if I'm boosting something, I can and it's a little harsh, the compression will put it back down. I learned that really from working on SSL consoles, because the way SSLs sound like the SSL sound that we're used to is EQing into the compressor. That gives you that spanky kind of SSL sound. All right, so next up is a little bit of other top-end EQ. And I get asked all the time, in comments, in emails, in general life, why do I use multiple EQs? Well, I use multiple EQs, multiple compressors, multiple whatever, because they all sound different, okay? But you could argue that the Renaissance EQs and the Wave stuff is a little bit more transparent. You could argue for or against that. I don't really want to have a big discussion about it. It's not designed to be as colored, say, as some of the analog ones are out there. But the great thing about this is I can boost, I can de-ess, I can put a little EQ boost into a compressor and just control that a bit. And then afterwards, as you see here, I'm also doing 3 dB lift at 8.5K and a roll-off at about 197.
Through a storm.
That's going into compressor.
Falling down.
And that's defaulting to the Renaissance compression setting, which I really, really like, which kind of gives a little bit of a spankiness to it.
As I walk.
Why I say that? That attack and release time is what defaults when you open it up. It gives me a very pop kind of, because it allows just enough attack to get through to give a little bit of aggression where I want.
As I walk through a storm.
Another EQ.
And it's all
and then de-essing afterwards.
Down.
This one's a little harder. I've been boosting around about 7 or 8K area, so this de-esser is at about 7K. It's at 6907. So it's just catching the excessive 7K boost. So I've done a 7K boost to make the whole thing feel a little bit more area and make it sound a bit more airy. And it's doing that, but at the same time, there's an occasional S that's getting a little carried away.
As I walk through a storm, and it's all.
So as you can see the movement on it, it's doing a little bit of de-essing here and there. It's just catching bits of it all the time. Okay, so, but it's not just generically doing it all over. So you see my sort of methodology. De-essing, EQ into compression, de-essing again, EQ into compression. And bear in mind also, which is very, very important to remember when you're mixing, is that you don't just have a standard way of doing things. Yes, have a template, have a way of bringing sounds in and then adjust from there. But you'll find that you will change EQs and compressors out with different singers, with different mic combinations, whatever it is, with different stuff that's given to you. And it's very, very important to remember that one size doesn't fit all. So sometimes you'll see 4 or 5 different EQs on there. And how did that happen? Well, that happened because when I brought in a new guitar or something, the vocal got a little lost. So what do? I don't necessarily go back and rebalance my de-essing EQ into compression setting because that's a fine balance. I might just insert an EQ at the very end and just boost a little top end, or take away a little top end or something, or do another de-esser just to control some of that top end boost. So it's not about rebalancing every single plug-in and all the different instruments. It's about just adding just a little bit where I need it. So often when you see these kind of mix breakdowns, not just from me, but from other mixers explaining their mix breakdown, that would explain why sometimes they seem to have 7 different plugins on something, because they've sat there and they've just tweaked something lightly, and they may not want to go back to and change the balance of an EQ, compression and de-esser or whatever working together. They might be adding the EQ at the end just to brighten the overall feel of something. So bear in mind, it's not a perfect science, because if it was, we would just have a template and we would just automatically put everything into the template and the mix would come out the other side. Yes, do build yourself templates. Do get into a situation where you're learning and you're building templates to make mixing easier. I do have all of these effects and stuff coming up on templates. So yeah, so that's just an important thing to remember, and I think it's worth talking about because I do get asked that question a lot. Why did you use 3 EQs? It's because of the process, because I may have had a template with 1 or 2 EQs in it, but I ended up putting maybe that 3rd EQ on was because of that reason. Okay, so that's everything that's going on in there. We've essentially got exactly the same setup as far as you know, the pre-chorus is concerned. It changes feel.
And I'm screaming, I'm picking.
There's this kind of trashed out piano, just EQ'd. It's just a crappy sounding piano in a good way. And the combination of stuff that's going on there is just some low roll off that we don't need. We don't need 110, but it's not like a cliff removing it. It's a gentle slope. Our old friend 350, 400, ugly frequencies being pulled out. Little 7K lift. Take it off. You hear that bottom end that we don't need? You can high pass. It's okay. High pass can be good. It makes room for other instruments. Okay. It's just knowing where to high pass and where not. And that's just listening to things together. Okay, so next up is the string part that comes in. And a little NV2 on it, just to control it. And again, the main thing about the NV2 is it allows those little lower in volume notes to come out. This bit here. So it just evens out some of that stuff. It's a lazy way to mix, but it works really great. I put it on, I turn up the bottom part of the plugin, which is here. It's adding a little 3 dB extra. I take it off. Like there, for instance. Take that one. See how that just evens out? So it allows the quieter stuff to come up, and then it's knocking 3 dB off the top of the loudest thing. So it's just pushing these two things together. Very, very nicely done. Great plugin. Very, very quick and easy to use in mixing. And I'm not sponsored by them. It's just a quick and easy to use plugin, and it makes a lot of my mixes move very, very quickly, and a lot of people I know and trust that you know use that plugin. Okay, oh, here's the bass. So it's basically a similar bass sound to before. I'm doing exactly the same thing. I'm just adding another C4 multi-band compressor. Control the super lows. Hear what it's doing on those swells. Really helping add to that, those low lows. And it's a slightly different tone with a little bit of distortion on it. So, see that pre-chorus?
And I'm screaming, I'm picking up the pieces. I got to let you know. But I'm punching through the ceiling, I'm chasing
So we cheated a little bit here. We took the demo backgrounds and EQ'd them and flew them in. So that's a stereo file of the demo backgrounds, but they're great. I mean, it was a case of why do we need to resync something that works? Which is a really, really great lesson. It really is, it's a great lesson. If it ain't broke, you don't have to fix it. I wrote this song with Liana. Liana's singing that background vocal. Why do we need to re-sing it? Liana is a co-writer on the song. She's very happy to be featured and to be part of the song. That's just the way it is. She's credited on the album. It's like, now obviously there's situations where, you know, you have to remove the artist on a different song, you can't, copyright infringement, blah, 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 whatever it might be, but not in this situation. It's a great stereo bounce.
And I'm screaming, I'm picking up the pieces. I got to let you know. Punching through the ceiling, I'm chasing down the feeling. No, I won't let it go. But I'm kicking and I'm screaming, I'm picking.
Now there's kind of a light flanging effect on it, and it's just printed as a stereo file. So there it is, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Okay, so the next big moment I think is that's worth talking about is the chorus.
Won't let it go. You try to calm me down. You're pushing me around, but I'm a warrior, warrior, warrior. You try to calm me down.
So we've got the lead vocal.
Warrior, 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 warrior.
We're using a little bit of Liana's background in there just to fill it out slightly. But this is the most interesting thing, is like a tiny bit of lo-fi. You would think lo-fi is a very underrated program. And the problem is that it's great for completely destroying something, like making it totally illegible, sonically illegible, and just like completely, you know, change every characteristic about it. But you know what it's also good for? It's also good for very, very subtly doing something. I have got this distortion on 1/10 of 1%.
Warrior, warrior, warrior.
None.
Warrior, warrior, warrior.
Now 1/10 of 1%. I know I'm not dreaming. You can hear just the tiniest amount. It just grits up. Where did I steal that from? I stole it from Neil Avron. Thank you, Neil. He didn't know, but I mixed half the Aerosmith record. He mixed the other half, or CLA mixed the 3 Marty Fredrickson songs, but Neil and I split up the album that I recorded. And the thing was, we would be tracking during the day, and then I'd drive. We'd all drive. It was usually me and Jack, obviously Jack Douglas, Stephen and Joe would drive, and then we'd go and sit with Neil and work on the mixes. He'd be mixing all day, and we'd come in there and do minor tweaks. Mainly because, you know, you're dealing with a band that has after 40 years of doing this, has very, very specific ideas about what they want to hear and how they want it to be. So Joe would come in there and say, I need to feature the baritone guitar over the rhythm guitar, etc., etc. And one of the things that I used to love is that he would put this on Stephen's vocal, and he'd always do like 0.1 or 0.2. And I heard him take it off for a second, and I'm just like, I don't hear any distortion, but I hear it sounds better when it's put on. So thank you, Neil. And Neil's a very great mixer. Listen to that 21 Pilots record, which I believe has sold about 1 billion records. It's doing massively well, #1 single, all that stuff. He's a very smart man. He mixes in a box. He knows his schnizzle. So anyway, that's a subtle thing, but it's definitely worth experimenting with. If you are in Pro Tools, use the lo-fi. You can also trash the schnizzle out of it as well. So there's one more set of harmony vocals down here. So that's manipulated. That's completely manipulated using Melodyne. And if you've watched the Melodyne videos, you can see how to do it. Link to Melodyne videos here. If you watch the Carlo Libertini videos, you'll see how to build these harmonies. It's like one of those things on its own, it's very manipulated, but in the track, you don't hear it as much. Barely at all.
You're pushing me around, but I'm a warrior, warrior, warrior.
So that's just a straight ahead stereo file of Caden singing the choruses. So you can see what we got. We got a manipulated, built Melodyne harmony. We have a stereo file of Caden singing it. We then have Liana blended in.
You're pushing me around, but I'm a warrior, warrior, warrior.
And then there's Caden's lead vocal and a little bit of a double on the end here. So this is all together.
You're pushing me around, but I'm a warrior, warrior, warrior.
So there's many blends you could do, but obviously, essentially, it's focusing on the lead vocal. It's 99% the lead vocal.
You're pushing me around, but I'm a warrior, warrior, warrior.
So as you can hear there, it's really all about the lead vocal. Those other things are blended underneath to give it some girth, but it's definitely all about the lead vocal. All right, so moving away from the vocals there, what else do we have going on? Well, let's go up to the top here and really see the insanity. So we have the drums. So this is a combination of the drums in there, which is the 64 Ludwig. And you can see the way I have it mic'd. I've got the Lewitt kick drum mics, the Lewitt overheads, got a 57 top and bottom, a Lewitt condenser, pencil condenser on the hi-hat, and then the big guns are the C12As on the toms. So a good old-fashioned rock and roll, thrashy drum kit. I think the secret things are here are adding the addictive drums in here. Here's the live kick on its own. Adding these in. So it's kind of more of the same. The blend of the three addictive kicks with the live kick, they're all kind of the same thing. Together they sound like the live kick, but a little bit more defined. If I take these out, I believe this is Matt Starr, you know, from Mr. Big and Ace Frehley and a whole bunch of other people. So he's laying into the kick. So you can hear that. So he's laying into the kick. Now, I could ask him to play the kick differently. If it was a more open thing, I could have the kick beater come back. So it's like boom, boom. Or you can do da, 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 da. I mean, this is Joey Kramer. Joey's like, he lays his pedal right into it. I mean, his beater just lays into it. You don't get that bottom kind of boom, boom. But then the other thing about Joey is when Joey plays the snare, he hits the rim and the center of the snare so evenly that it is literally like a drill going through your head. It's like, I've never heard a drummer play a snare as loudly and as effectively and as evenly as Joey Kramer. I would say that Matt's somewhere like that. That's more his kind of thing. However, we have the live snare, it's a Supraphonic, which is the same Supraphonic as sitting in there. So pretty natural sounding. So we add in so it's pretty natural sounding. There's some grace note stuff up here which you're not hearing on this particular part of the track. But the samples together are the D28, which those of you, if you haven't already, get my sample pack. The D28 is in there. The thing I like about that, it's a lot of body, it's a lot of lows. It's a really good sounding snare. So really all of those snares are doing, those three addictives, they're very low, is just adding a little bit more aggression to the natural snare. Without the natural snare, with the natural snare. Just the natural snare. Add these. So you get the idea. They're giving it a little bit more rock and roll aggression. It's a tough one. You know, you can make different choices. I know on a lot of records, especially like 90s records when they first discovered like samples and stuff like that, it was a lot more how can I put this? A lot more primitive in those days. You weren't able to tune the samples. So you can make conscious decisions like here to add a more aggressive, higher pitched, using addictive drums. If you want to use slate trigger, any of those ones you can get in there and you can pitch the snare to match your existing snare. Here, that wasn't really the case. Here it was a case of like, let's keep it higher, let's add a little bit more aggression to the drums. So here's the drums with the pitched up snare, addictive. So again, it's still fairly open, natural sounding, even with those stuff. Okay, so there's a loop here. Without it, with it. But I think this is a big deal down here. Here is an addictive print. That's the hard as nails snare. And that's more of the elements that were from the original dance music version of this. So you can see these would have been the two things that we had originally. So once again, what we did is we took a poppier, dancier version and just rocked it out a little bit. So let's hear all the stuff together. Oh, the only other thing is like this stuff at the beginning here is like for the downbeat. So those of you, if you haven't got this already, it's kind of a cymbal and an explosion at the same time that I made. And then just two cymbals to go with it. So I've got two cymbal samples with that explosion that matches up with the cymbal. And then the other elements that we're adding in here, and again, this comes down to like the mix decisions. So if you hear what we've done here, these were added just to give a bit more aggression to the snare. This one down here. So you bring all of those things together and you get the drum sound. You've got an aggressive drum kit created from 64 with those other dancey kind of elements put in there. While we're here, let's just highlight these two elements here. Those kind of like frame a chorus. It's just framing those downbeats there. There's also a couple of transition moments that we should probably talk about in the pre-chorus, which we didn't get to. And those are here. So you'll get those as well. I think those existed in our original kind of dancey, poppier version. Great, so the only other thing I think to note, really specifically in the chorus, is this. Just more of a dance kind of bass. MV2, all about controlling the bottom end. So it's really using the same kind of settings that we had. Acoustic even. So what I did is, like a lot of times people will create, I'm sure you've done it yourself, sidechained keyboards. I actually printed sidechain keyboards. So here's sidechain keyboards. You've got that reverse kind of sound sidechain effect. Here's all the keys. Just the orchestral elements just to make it a little classier, more in keeping with her. I mean, the great thing about all these things is that, you know, they're added to keep this kind of classy aspect of what she does. But at the same time, you could take this in any direction. You could mix this and keep those kind of string things and feature them more than anything else. And really give it, you know, give it your own interpretation. Okay, so that is everything going on in that first chorus. I think the only thing really to do now is to go to the second verse. So those are reversed chords. Rakes playing the chords. If you listen to it with the acoustic. So the acoustic's doing ba dum ga ga dum ga dum ga dum ga da, and the electric is finishing at the end of the phrase, not going quite through the phrase. So it's ga dum ga dum ga, as opposed to go ga dum ga dum ga dum ga dum ga dum ga dum. It's so it's a nice little counterpoint. They're playing the same voicings, except one is coming up and down itself, the other one's going, and then we have the reverse of the chord underneath. So it's just a nice, interesting way to be creative using,
on the string,
you know, using very simple ideas. So we could take, you got one acoustic guitar part, maybe doing, then the electric going, and then of course a reverse. So once again, and then one just going. So and then with the reverse. So it's, the great thing is you can do that with, so you could just take the one part, the same voicing, it's not going to be fighting, you don't have to worry about there being like notes that poke their head out because you're in the same voicing. Quite often I find that, you know, especially with electric guitars, there might be an unevenness depending on how much drive you've got. If you've got just enough drive, you're okay. But if you don't have enough drive, you might have don don bing, and this high note just screams at the top of its head and doesn't sink into the track like the other notes. So there you are, it's a great example of just using the same voicing by doing a back and forth arpeggio that's continuous, the other one just and then a reverse break of the same voicing. So a quick, easy, lazy solution. It works great.
on the string,
The only other thing that we've added in here is just a little dumb loop. Look at that, destroyed by Bomb Factory. Helps brings out that hi-hat. Like, where's the hi-hat? There it is. Do not, under any situation, underestimate the good old-fashioned comes through Pro Tools Bomb Factory 1176. It may not be the best 1176 sounding compressor. I have no idea. I've never compared it, but I love it. I love how quick and easy it is. I open it up all the time. It's free. I love it. It works great. Pre-chorus essentially the same. Second chorus, we're not really adding anything additionally. Just double checking. Yep, we're talking the same elements. So the only other thing really to think about here is what we're doing in the bridge. Just a kick. So everybody's playing that same so one feels like it's sidechained. The one's on the downbeat and one's being controlled or sidechained, but of course it's already printed. You've got
I'm a warrior. I'm a warrior. I'm a warrior. I'm a warrior.
So what I did is I muted everything except for overheads and just cymbal bleed. So the kick that's coming through is super, super light, just to bleed into the overheads. So the kick is bleeding through the overheads, which is fine, totally cool with that. But so it gets out of the way of this kick. Remember that kick is still EQ'd, still got the low lows. Why would I do that? Well, I do that so that when the impact of the real drums come back in, it's big. Okay, so the main outro stuff that's going on here is there's the energy track from the acoustics. So I could have done that with heavy guitars, but it just felt like too heavy-handed to put those heavy guitars in. So I've got this crazy, crazy lead guitar. It's really affected. There's no compression or EQ on the guitars that are recorded. That's how it was recorded, like that. I believe that is my Carl Martin. Probably the Carl Martin chorus, just detuning it. It's going to be the echo tone delay. Seriously detuning it. Yeah, so those three guitars really add energy to it. I was talking earlier about this, that, you know, when you do guitar stuff, quite often, growing up the way I did in England, with Queen and all those kind of bands, there's lots of kind of like, you know, we would do lots and lots. We would do lots of roots and thirds. Brian May in particular would add like A to a C, for instance. You know, if there was a harmony part, you might put a, because it gives you that minor feel, so it's sadder. So you might do, it's just, you know, beautiful melody things. But what I found with working with a lot of American rock bands, and this is a different approach, which I love, a lot of fives, a lot of, if it's, they'll do lots of these kind of, because it's tough. It's just a tougher way of doing it. So sometimes it's quite, if you want to add energy and you've got a high line part, yeah, it's nice to put thirds in, it's nice to put seconds, it's nice to put sixes in, passing notes, things that sound really beautiful. But if your only intention, not always, but if your main intention is to like give it some angst and some energy, roots and fives really do that. You know, the thing about a five is it doesn't, you know, when you're not implying the major third or the minor third, it just sounds dark. You know, it's like, I always think root five harmonies are very ecclesiastical, very church-like, you know, very ominous. So I think that, you know, think about that when you're doing like guitar overdubs at the end. You know, go for the root, go for a super high root, and put the five in before you put the third in. And then take a step back and see if that's just what you wanted, that root and fifth, and then maybe add the third afterwards. Okay, great. So those are the elements to add the additional excitement to the end. So hopefully that covers everything. It's a lot of the same tricks that I've done before, but it's more about the production and the way that I did this, because it started live as a purely pop song with no live drums. When we added the live drums, we still used other elements to make it more aggressive and to keep the dance elements in there. But I felt it was necessary to put live drums on this track because I didn't want Caden's record to move from like, you know, rock to pure dance, pure pop. I wanted to kind of blend it together so it had a cohesiveness. However, if you listen to the record, it's very diverse in its genres. There's so many different things going on. But she's a great singer. She's super young. She's developing an amazing voice. She'll only get better and better. So it's great to leave the door open if she wants to go a bit more pop or a bit more EDM, or even more rock. I think that's also important as well, is to understand, most importantly I should say, is to understand your artist. Understand the vision that you have for them, and whether it's producing, engineering, songwriting, playing on, or mixing, whatever it is, whatever one of those elements it is, make sure that that vision is very, very concise and very focused. Anyway, I hope you have a marvelous time mixing this song. Of course, as ever, let's have a great discussion about it. I look forward to hearing your mixes, and have a marvelous time recording, mixing, and whatever else you're doing today. I hope you enjoyed the mix breakdown of Warrior. Please go and sign up on the email list and download the free tracks. The link will be jumping all over the place. There'll be one down below. Sign up, download the tracks. Mix it anywhere you want. You could do the pure pop one, you could do a more organic approach, or you can do, like I did, a blended one. The multi-tracks are there for you to download and for you to mess around with. So have a marvelous time recording and mixing, and thank you ever so much for watching.